Hello, everyone, Conscious Business Club community, and everyone who is watching on any other channel. My name is Anya. I'm a founder, CEO of Free Spirit Human Capital, and also co-founder of Conscious Business Club. And today we have first ambassador talk with amazing guest, Mark Bentley. He is an expert for jinkies and human design that you already know I'm a huge advocate of. And I'm super excited that he will share a lot of wisdom on this topic today. So, Mark, welcome. Welcome to the party.
Hey, Anya, I really appreciate it, genuinely. It's I've spent a lot of time playing in consciousness, spirituality, and all these areas, but my real passion is bringing it to where the rubber meets the ground, right? Which is business. And that's really where we all come together. So, yeah, I'm really grateful to be here and looking forward to the conversation.
This is really cool because Gene Keys, it's been around for a while, but still, a lot of people, they still don't know what it is. Maybe like, I don't know. Can you tell me just, like out of my curiosity, Gene Keys and human design? It's like I would say like an add-on to human design, Gene Keys, or how would you present it?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say the way that I like to think of it is, human design and the gene keys, they're both syntheses. They're combinations of wisdom from many ages, that have come together from everything from the old ages to the science and biology of today. And the way I like to think of it is that human design is like the workshop manual for your vehicle, the human body that you're driving. And the gene keys is more like the map and the compass to the hero's journey or the racetrack, that you're designed to drive on. So they really are complementary. And I often say human design is something that's good to see a mechanic about, whereas the gene keys is, I find, so much more accessible to be able to use in everyday life, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Good point. Yeah, I was just recently I was watching an interview with Richard. Is it Richard? Yeah, the founder.
Yeah.
Amazing, absolutely amazing human being. So whoever is watching now, I would really recommend you to check that out. And but yeah, I'm gonna stop battling now, and I'm letting you, to take over this stage. I'm gonna remove myself from the stage, and I really, I'm looking forward to this presentation, and I wish you have a lot of fun.
Hey, fantastic. Well, thank you, Anya, for the introduction. It's super warming. And I see Patricia already has dropped a comment. Hey, lovely Anya, great to see you and Mark talk about one of my favorite topics. That's awesome, Patricia. So if you are watching the live stream, please do interact. Drop a comment. Hopefully it all kind of finds its way through. And we can make it a little interactive, and I'm happy to take any questions. So first of all, before I introduce myself properly, I would love to hear, if you are watching, I'd love just to hear, have you experienced gene keys or human design? How far have you gotten into it? And also around business, what are your main questions and challenges that you might like to know about how the gene keys can help with? And while we wait for those to come in, I guess I should introduce myself and say that my name is Mark Bentley. I am an official Gene Keys ambassador, which essentially means that I have devoted my life to sharing this work. I've been working with Richard Rudd, the author of the Gene Keys, for it must be over 10 years now. And one of the things for me that is really important over these last 10 plus years working with human design and the gene keys and other modalities is to really put it into practice. So for me, it comes down to, is this pragmatic? Is it practical? Can it actually help make change in my everyday life? Or is it just another interesting thing that's going to pull me away and distract me from, the everyday human sufferings? And so for me, the reason I became an ambassador, the reason I committed my life to sharing this work is because I saw through some very challenging times how the framework that the Gene Keys provided me empowered me to really make huge transformations in stepping up in self-empowerment, sovereignty, and radical self-accountability, really, where I get to take more empowerment of how I choose to write my story. Awesome. So yeah, I see Thomas, new to the idea. Fantastic. Well, welcome, Thomas. And Taya there, how can Gene Keys support leaders in their development so they can have a greater impact on others and business in general? Awesome. All right, fantastic. So first of all, I'll give you a little bit of background. So not only have I been working with Gene Keys, human design, a lot of these kind of, you could say in a way, archetypal systems that we use to, in a sense, get to know ourselves better and cultivate self-awareness. But my background actually goes back into business. It's when I left high school, I spent a lot of time traveling. I actually ran off with the circus. So I ran my own circus business, doing entertainment, nightclubs, festivals, that kind of thing. So I lived quite a radical lifestyle. And as I moved on in my years, I did ground down. I'm from here, Perth, in Western Australia. And I worked in a lot of warehousing around the world. So I worked in logistics a lot. I worked in nightclubs. I was running bars, nightclubs, all these different things. Even at one point, running 3 different establishments at the same time, going from day shift to night shift, back to day shift without even sleeping. Had quite a crazy world. And so through this time, it led me to eventually being the warehouse manager for Husqvarna, so in West Australia. So I was responsible for coordinating the logistics, the big business that was happening over on the East Coast. So I'd often be flying back and forwards, recruitment, setting up the new warehouse locations, that kind of thing, working between the sales representatives of the product, as well as the warehousing and making sure the product gets out and dealing with customers, and their stuff there. So I've had a lot of, a lot of real world pragmatic experience of what the challenges are out there when you're trying to take an idea out to the world and you have to work with other human beings. And so when I share what I share today, it is from a place of practicality, of how can this really help our businesses be more profitable? And I like to think of it as moving from a kind of for-profit business model to a for-benefit business model. Really going into business with the consideration of how does this benefit everyone involved? So we come from quite a colorful history. If we look at since the Industrial Revolution, all the way through as businesses evolved and power structures have evolved, we've gone from a quite archaic kind of business system where it's been discipline, punishment, and forcing people into place. Whereas I feel that where we are heading is moving away from this need to use force in a way to get people to align to business goals, and actually start shifting that to a place where we can actually create more synergy, where you can get the most out of your employees, the most out of yourself in your business. So whether you're a solo entrepreneur or you're employing people and having to work with others, whatever way it is, this conversation is really about what actions can we take as individuals within this breathing system of business that we are involved in, and contribute the fullness of ourselves so that we can actually thrive while we're doing business. And so I was talking to Taya as we were kind of preparing for this and thinking, okay, what heading should we give this? And the term mind your own business really landed at home. And when, it was very playful, but if you think about this term, mind your own business, often you'll hear it when you're asking questions of people and you're saying, oh, why are you doing that? Why are you doing this? Why isn't it like this? And they say, why don't you mind your own business? Now, I learned over the last years that is actually pretty incredible advice, to mind your own business. Because if we often think about business as being something external to ourselves. We think about bank accounts, tax returns. We think about, retirement funds and all these kinds of things, transactions and sales and marketing. But there's another business that is happening while we are in that field. And that business is the inside business. It's your own inner world. You yourself, you are the CEO of an incredible organization of cells, millions of cells that are working in your body, and they are being coordinated and synergized and working together. And disease and sickness will usually come when we are not working in synergy, when our body and our cells are not working in harmony and alignment. And so through the science of epigenetics, we have come to understand that the way you perceive your environment is what tells your DNA how to respond. And so what we're finding is that a lot of the challenges and tribulations that we get in business when we have different staff members and people trying to get along is that we're so busy minding other people's businesses and judging the outside and not necessarily taking care of our own inner business. So that when we turn up to have a meeting or a tough debate or discussion, rather than being able to really speak authentically and honestly with the shared vision of getting a solution that will be supportive for everyone, we get more caught up in reaction to what we perceive outside, what we think other people are thinking or doing or being, or how things should be. And this reaction comes from a state of inner stress. And it also leads to reacting old patterns rather than coming at it from a fresh perspective. Every moment, like they say, you can never step in a running river, the same spot in a running river twice. And it's the same in our lives. If we think of other people as always being the same, then what happens is we actually disconnect from their authentic expression. We're no longer hearing them. So the reason I say mind your own business is that if you want to have a thriving business, you first have to take care of this business, the business of self. And when you can clear your account books, your emotional accounting, that means that you can then turn up into any challenging experience with a clean slate. Whereas a lot of us, what we tend to do if we're not doing that self-work is we carry a lot of emotional baggage, a lot of emotional traumas from past jobs, our childhood, upbringing, society, all kinds of things that are triggering and challenging. And we're not dealing with that emotion. And if you're not dealing with that emotion, then it means, in a way, it's like when you balance your checkbooks, right? When you're doing business with your financials, you need to balance your spendings versus your, your receipts, what's coming in, and balance that out so that you don't end up in a massive debt. A lot of us did not learn emotional regulation at a young age. Most people in the world, and business itself, has kind of pushed the idea of emotions and things out of the picture, saying, leave it at home. It shouldn't be coming into this picture. But the problem is we're asking people not to be emotional at work and erratic, yet they don't always have the support and the skills to be able to handle their emotions, regulate themselves properly while they are at home. So it does come with them one way or another. It just gets suppressed and then bubbles out whenever there's a challenge. So this brings me to the Gene Keys and why I am such a massive advocate for them, not only in personal lives, but also and especially in business. The Gene Keys are an ancient system. The roots of it go back 5,000 years to the Chinese I Ching, and it provides us a unique profile. So you can go to genekeys.com/free-profile, or just go to genekeys.com. You'll see free profile at the top, and that's where you can get your free profile by putting in your date of birth, etc. And the framework that the Gene Keys profile is essentially providing is one that helps discern the difference between what is your fear body expressing itself and what is your genuine truth. It helps to refine the difference between what is the conditioning of your upbringing, of your schooling, of what you were told you were meant to be and how you're meant to be, and what is truly you. And 20 years ago, it was a lot harder to really express ourselves authentically. Yet the world has changed massively with all the new technological revolution that's happened. I mean, if you just look at the tech startups out there, the people that are CEOs and head of these massive tech companies, they're crazy. They're wearing all kinds of clothing. They're not following any strict rules. They're kind of just being a lot more free. So we are living in a time where we have an opportunity to really change the way we are bringing ourselves into the workplace. And so this Gene Keys profile is essentially made up of 3 different sequences. And we call them sequences because they're designed to be contemplated in an order over time to unlock your natural genetic genius. So that is what genius essentially means here. So you'll see in my little tag there, Mark Bentley, Live Your Genius. That's my business, Live Your Genius. And really what this is talking about, when we talk about living your genius, it's about expressing what comes naturally to your genome, to your genes. That in each and every one of us, we have a genetic makeup that has the design of the vehicle and how we are built to take it out into the world. Now, without getting too esoteric, I do believe that we pick this design as we come in. We are not victims of it. And so when we understand this profile, it allows us to begin unlocking our inner core stability in our physical body so that we can stay grounded even during challenging times. And then you have what's called the Venus sequence, which is really about relationships. And the Gene Keys has it a core principle that your purpose in life, that each of us comes with a purpose in our DNA to be expressed. And that purpose is evolved through our relationships, not through being on our own in a cave, hidden away, doing nothing, but rather being in interaction. So the Gene Keys is a system of contemplation designed to be taken into the workplace, not to be pulled away from in that sense. And that's why I love it. It's very pragmatic. You don't need to kind of stop doing the busy, crazy life that you have, but rather you can bring it into that. And so the Venus sequence gives you the clues. It gives you a framework to help contemplate, what are my specific trigger points? What's the theme that gets me when people are expressing something or talking? And why does it happen? And so each of the Gene Keys has a beautiful text that comes with it, or audio contemplations. There's lots of ways of going about it. But it essentially takes you through understanding how these spheres work. Now, so we have the activation sequence, which is all about grounding in purpose and getting core stability so that you can handle the emotional challenges that may come through the evolution of your purpose. The Venus sequence helps to really get clear on how we can navigate these emotional waters. And when we say relationships, it's not just the lovers. It's our families, if we have children or parents or friends, but it's also at the workplace. And so in the Venus sequence part of the profile, there's these really important aspects called the IQ and EQ, which are essentially the trigger point and the emotional digestion. So by understanding this part of your profile, it helps to really get a good grasp of what is it that triggers you? What is it that gets under your skin and presses that button, and causes you to lose stability in that way? Because when you begin to understand it, you cultivate a kind of self-awareness that empowers you, that when you are in challenging conversations or there needs to be tough decisions made where it's going to be a hard one to come to agreement, you can become self-aware that if you are being triggered by something, you can have that little voice that's in the background watching while it's happening in real time. And you can really kind of get to know, okay, is this my trigger? Is it real? Or is it my fear that's coming up from a past experience? And this self-awareness that we begin cultivating over time allows us to stop reacting from that trigger, but rather to pause and just receive, listen, and then have a kind of a pivot, a shift in perspective through understanding what's going on. And that allows us, instead of getting triggered and everything getting messy, it allows us to get deeper together and lean into it, to be more open, to be more transparent. And then the Venus sequence takes you to a place called your vocation. And this is the beginning of what we call the Pearl sequence. So the Pearl sequence is the third and final sequence for now in your profile. And this Pearl sequence is all about prosperity. It's how are you designed to prosper in the world. And so when you look at this, you'll see there's different spheres, but one that I will be bringing up later today in the demo is the sphere of culture. The sphere of culture in your Pearl sequence of your profile is all about what you are bringing to get to the collective culture of the workplace, of the organization, or the world in general with your work. And by understanding that, it really can help create some context for what your role and purpose is. So this is essentially your Gene Keys profile. It's 3 sequences and how the framework can really support the process. Now, in regards to businesses, and so I would love to hear from all of you that are watching, if you want to throw in the comments, if you consider yourself more an entrepreneur, or are you working more in a business collective or a group or a company? And that would be a great little tip there. One of the things that I'm beginning to see, and there's a gentleman called Ken Wilber who does some amazing work on spiral dynamics and the ideas of organizations and the evolution of organizations over the years and where we are heading. And he talks about this concept of, these different colors from red to green to teal. And it's an important thing to understand in organizations that if you do not have a shared collective vision that all of your employees bond over, then what that leads to is a need for more discipline and control. Whereas if you do have a collective vision, so if all of your staff and the people there really believe in what they are doing at the company, what the company is doing or the business is doing, then you will find that the company will be so much more self-organizing. The people in the business and the company will naturally want to do the right thing, to work and put a little extra in when it's needed. But it's important that they are connected to purpose. And so I see we got a few entrepreneurs with us, and I think entrepreneurs usually are the ones most led to this kind of work initially. But I think it's important that we do get it out there to corporations and businesses as well, because, and in the end, if you are an entrepreneur, you will be working with other organizations in partnership and collaboration, etc. So however it is happening, what this has boiled down to for me is that one of the most important things in our modern society, one of the biggest crises that we are facing in this world is a lack of authentic purpose. When people are living a day-to-day life without a genuine sense of meaning and purpose, it leads to depression, anxiety, it leads to an increased suicide rate. Not having a sense of meaning or purpose really does just pull the floor out of our feet. And it can become quite a sticky kind of quicksand. And so this is where the Gene Keys can really help by anchoring us in understanding what is my unique purpose. Because we grow up in the world and everyone says, oh, you be a lawyer, be a doctor, be this, be that. And they tell us all these things that we should be. But your purpose is not about what you're doing. Your sense of purpose is about the frequency that you are bringing to what you are doing. And so by really having this contemplation around what is the meaning of what I'm bringing to this work, it can start cultivating a deeper sense of inspiration and motivation to actually do what you need to do, to go out of your way when the challenges are there, to overcome what's there. And one of the things I like to bring up at this point, we often get caught in this idea. So I do Gene Keys sessions for people. And in the consultations, it's essentially looking at, okay, what are the challenges? Let's create the environment for breakthrough. And one of the challenges that I would see would be that people would start cracking open. They'd start getting a sense that there's something more to life than the job, the mundane job they seem to be going to. And then they have a reading like with the Gene Keys, and they think, oh my God, I can live a life on purpose. And then they quit their jobs. They stop what they're doing and they try and just break free and start creating something, fantastical, something special, something amazing, and the real trick here is that it doesn't matter where you are or what job you have. You can begin cultivating your purpose. And in fact, should cultivate your purpose where you are, because it's where you are that the universe has brought to your table that you have the most ability to respond. So whatever challenges are at that workplace, they are the perfect challenges that you can take on to start honing your emotional intelligence, start really feeling and experimenting, where can I find my purpose in this place? So to give you an example, I personally have a 43rd gene key in my sphere of purpose. In your profile, it's the one at the very bottom, a 43.1. And the 43rd gene key is all about creating the environment for breakthroughs. It's about letting go of what we think we know so that we can allow space to receive new inspirations and insights and epiphanies and understandings of what is possible. And so that is the frequency that I'm designed to bring wherever I go. So whether I'm going onto webinars or podcasts or talks, or if I'm scanning groceries at a shopping center, I am still there to bring that field. And so giving you a bit of an example here is, when you think about this concept, it's easier to think, people will say, well, you've got an easy one, Mark. You've got this 43rd gene key that's all about creating epiphanies and insights, and you're a gene keys guide. That's what you do. You go into obsessions and you talk to people and you create the space for insights. But if I was scanning groceries at a shop, at a grocery center, right, just beep, beep, doing that old mundane job, most people probably can't think of a more mundane job than that. But think about this. If I was to go out right now and quit my job doing all of this work, and I've contemplated it at times, there's an extremist in me that loves pushing the edges. If I was to quit my job and go work at the grocery center, the shopping center, and scan those groceries, every customer that I come in contact with will feel, if I am in my gift, if I am in my affirmed kind of self-empowered state, when I'm doing those groceries, I'm scanning them, they are going to be immersed in that field with me of breakthrough and epiphanies. The general conversation that I'm having with them while I'm scanning those groceries, oh, how was your day? They're going to start opening up to me, because that's what people do around me in my design. I'm built that way. So wherever I am, people just open up. They start talking. They start thinking about things differently. So I don't need to be sitting in the seat as a guide to be able to do my purpose. I can do it anywhere. And it is the same for all of us. And sometimes we get trapped by this idea that we need to be in the perfect job. We need to be in the right place. Oh, this job is wrong for me. I can't live my purpose here. And I would challenge that it doesn't matter where you are. And so the beauty is that whatever position you are in, whatever challenge you're facing, the more you can cultivate a sense of meaning in that job, the more the frequency around you begins to open and attract reality to you. You begin to attract the right people, the right opportunities. So going back to this scanning the groceries, I'm there beeping away and I'm having these conversations. Now, I might have a regular customer that comes through every week. They come for their weekly shopping and they see me. So they come to my counter and they love coming in, lining up. We have our little chat. We have our little moment that might seem meaningless. But if I continue to, instead of feeling like I'm a victim of my situations and the world around me, but if rather I am seeing it as a great opportunity to bring myself fully into this job and just do it as best I can, then the frequency that person is feeling will be inspiring. And there could be any chance that they're going to say, hey, Mark, how happy are you at this job? Because I've actually got an opportunity that I think you might be good for. And so we have to leave space in our worlds for magic and mystery to happen. That synchronicity, as far as I'm concerned, is a real thing. And it's where, they say synchronicity is, they say prayer is us speaking to the divine, and synchronicity is the divine communicating back again. So if we are constantly focusing on our higher nature, our gifts of wanting to bring ourselves fully into this space, then the synchronicities of life will meet us. They will bring the experiences. And this is something in human design where, as I said at the beginning, human design is like the workshop manual. It can be very complex. I don't usually recommend human design as a self-guided pathway unless you are passionately interested in it, in which case, fantastic. But it is like a university degree. But one of the beautiful things about human design is it helps us understand our strategy, our decision-making strategy. How do we know what is correct for us to take action on or not? And so in that situation, we're all unique in it. So by knowing, I always recommend everyone get at least one human design session so you understand your basic strategy. That's the most important part of human design for me. Once you have that, the gene keys is then the framework that you can contemplate everyday actions through to help refine your frequency, in a sense, your fragrancy. Your purpose is essentially the fragrance that you bring out to the world. And so, yeah, Taya, so it's not so much about what we do as how we do it. And from there, mysteries can happen. Absolutely, Taya, that's beautifully said. It is, we do think we're often conditioned from such a young age that it's about what we do in life. If you do this and you do this and you do this, everything will work out. Yet paradoxically, I'm witnessing so many people that lived that lifestyle for so many years. They were the good boys and girls of the world that did what they were supposed to do. And I'm also seeing a lot of them really struggling right now because the world is changing. A lot of jobs we're going through a new industrial revolution right now with artificial intelligence, automation, all these things coming online. They're coming online fast and they're being slowed down. Otherwise, they would come even faster right now. With all of this coming in, the old way that we used to do business with is no longer really working. We can't really just run this cold, heartless business that says, leave your problems at home, get here, do your job, and you get paid your money, be happy, that's it. We need to start really reimagining how we are doing business. And that means first and foremost, we need to take radical self-responsibility. Because as you were saying, responsibility, ability to respond. Responsibility, and this is something I really want to nail in even further. When we are working in business, etc., and we have partnerships and we have collaborations and things like this, one of the things that can become very overwhelming is the idea of responsibility. We begin feeling like we have this massive responsibility for everything. I know myself personally, it was one of the biggest challenges. I felt responsible for everyone's suffering. I felt responsible for everyone's success and happiness because I was a massive people pleaser from a young age. So what that meant is that, yes, I would be very praised at work, but it was because I was going way beyond my responsibilities in order to please others. So yes, I would get certificates, I would get up raises, I would get all the praise in the world, but I burnt myself out time and time again. And then I would let people down because eventually I would burn out and I could no longer continue. And so everyone that had gotten kind of addicted and relied upon all that extra effort I was putting in now no longer had me there. And the truth of the situation begins to come to the surface and it's not sustainable. And then it leads to blame games and whose fault and this fault. And I'll always take responsibility. If I'm exhausted, it was my fault. Because as much as others might have been able to recognize it, if I'm going to mind my own business, I need to make sure I'm balancing my books. And not just my financial books, not just my emotional books, but my energy. I only have so much energy to share in a day. And I'm a full-time father, as well as doing homeschool with my son, as well as running a business and doing these podcast events, and so much more. If we do not manage our own energy levels, which is through health, well-being, rest, learning how to say no, then we will find ourselves with a business that is in massive debt, an inner business that is in energy debt, emotional debt, financial debt, mental debt. We just end up in all of this debt because we haven't been taking care of our own business. We've been taking care of somebody else's. And so this is where I really wanted to nail in with responsibility. Your responsibilities, no matter what is written in your contract, your responsibility can only ever be what you have an ability to respond to. If you take on the responsibility for something that you do not have an ability to respond to, you are not going to be able to fulfill that responsibility. It is going to create mental drag and stress and drain that will just, and self-judgment, which in turn is what often keeps people from breaking through the glass ceiling and achieving success in the world. And so this is where by working with something like the Gene Keys, And having that framework, it is very powerful in beginning to recognize what is my conditioning that makes me think I have an ability to respond to these things, and what is my true responsibility. And it empowers us to stop taking on other people's responsibilities, to stop taking on other people's debts, in a sense, their other business debts, and allows them the freedom to discover their own strengths and weaknesses while we still support them with compassion, but not over compassion, because eventually someone burns out. So beautiful. So I would love, if you have any questions, drop them in. There is another aspect here that I would love to put in, which when we look at the gene keys, one of the things that's probably interesting to contemplate here is there are 64 different gene keys. So this book here is called the Gene Keys book. You'll see a different cover when you get one, but this is essentially, when you look at the contents list, you have 64 gene keys, and every one of these gene keys are describing an aspect of human behavior, of the human condition. So there's two ways you can work with the gene keys. One is to use your profile and to contemplate it in a very kind of specific, tailored to you kind of way. And it's one of my highly recommended ways. The other way you can work with it, and none of this requires belief system, by the way. You know, even if you put in the wrong profile, just the process of contemplation and bringing self-awareness to how you are bringing yourself to the world and to your business will make huge change. But the other way that is very powerful is you can use this as your own little manual of human experience. So whatever challenge you are having at work, whether it's with your sales or whether it's with people or whatever it is, all you do is simply go through the 64 keys, looking over the shadows. And one of those shadows will jump at you, will really kind of speak to you about what is actually happening underneath. So to give you a little example, we've got the shadows of entropy, dislocation, chaos, intolerance, impatience, conflict, division. And so this one right here, Gene Key 6, I would highly recommend anyone that has to deal with confrontational situations in the workplace, especially if you're in human resources, to deeply contemplate, read, and when we say contemplate, it means to hold the ideas that you've been reading, the text, the ideas, the concept, carry that with you through your life. When you're showering, ponder while you're showering. When you're stuck at the lights, when you're at work, think, how does what I read about this gene key, this shadow of conflict, how does it relate to my situation right now? And it's not about having answers. The gene keys does not give you the answers, but rather it gives you the spices and the perfect kind of recipe for your contemplations for you to find your own answers. But this I thought was a good example. I'll use the Gene Key 6 to talk about something we call the frequency band. And so with every gene key, you have a frequency band, a shadow, a gift, and a city. And so when we talk about this frequency band, we're talking about your DNA. So one of the most beautiful things about the gene keys was when they discovered that DNA has 64 codons. Essentially, it's the programming language of our DNA. There are 64 codons in our DNA, in every single DNA strand. And those 64 codons each play a different role in creating the amino acids and proteins and things in your body that create your experience of the body. So the gene keys has 64 keys to match those 64 codons. And every key is related to your body in some way. And so when we're talking about the frequency band of the gene key, so Gene Key 6, we have the shadow, the gift, and the city. So the shadow of a gene key is essentially the fear spectrum. It's what turns up when we have some kind of fear in our body. Fear of being rejected, fear of failing, fear of looking silly, right? There's all kinds of fears that can play out. And a lot of the fears, it doesn't mean they're real dangers, But whenever we perceive some form of danger, and remember, our eyes perceive, our senses perceive, but it's our mind that gives meaning to what we perceive. So if we had a traumatic experience as a teenager in our first job, then that may come back when you're running a massive CEO, you're the CEO of a massive company and all the rest. You might still have that teenager program, fear, being triggered inside. So the fear keys, the shadow keys of the gene keys, are speaking to these patterns. Then you have the gift frequency. That's the word in the middle. You get these three keynotes, the spectrum that this works on. So for the sixth gene key, we have the shadow of conflict. So it's the fear of having something taken away from you. When you read the sixth gene key, that's the essence of it. The essence is that all conflict stems from the perception that somebody else can take something away from you. Now, and test that theory. Think about anywhere you have had conflict in your life and think about, what was it actually that you were worried about that person taking away from you? Was it your freedom? Was it your money? Was it your job, that you would lose your job? Because it's these fears that lead us to become confrontational. Or we might become suppressed. The shadow nature of the gene keys has a reactive nature where we're kind of a bit more boisterous and out there, putting our shadow onto others. And then it has a repressive behavior where if we're not putting it onto others, we put it into ourselves. So for me personally, as a massive people pleaser, I would internalize and repress the conflict. So I would be all smiling and trying to keep the peace outwardly, but inwardly I was tearing myself apart and beating myself up. So I was still experiencing the shadow of conflict. So the beauty of the gene keys is Richard Rudd, the author of the gene keys, would say 10% of your awareness on the shadow. So only 10% of the awareness is to actually consider, where is this shadow playing? We just want to give it a name. So, okay, I'm worried about looking silly on this webinar with everyone, and so I'm getting a little bit defensive. Okay, great. Now we have awareness. Now, once that awareness comes in and you cultivate this, in the beginning, it takes a little bit of practice, but once you do it for a while, it becomes second nature. That my mind automatically then thinks, okay, so if that's the defense mechanism, first of all, am I actually in danger? No, I don't think you're going to take my job. I don't think you're going to take my money. I don't think anyone here is actually threatening. I've got lovely comments in there. So I actually think that shadow must be, if it was playing up, it must just be a remnant of something. So then I would read the sixth gene key. I would read the shadow to help myself understand the dynamic that's going on, to acknowledge my shadow, because my shadow is not trying to punish me. It's not something to be ashamed of. All of your shadow keynotes in your profile are something to be loved dearly, that they are something that you want to come bring closer to you rather than push away. Because your shadow frequencies are your defense mechanisms. 100 years ago, those shadow frequencies were necessary. Conflict was necessary to stay alive in many situations. There was real danger. Now, the gene keys are helping us move out of that fear body, because a lot of those dangers and fears are no longer there. They're just being perpetuated by social media, by all these stories and pressures that we put on each other. And so then what we do is we want to put 90% of our awareness on the gift frequency of this aspect. So for the sixth gene key, the shadow of conflict is the gift of diplomacy. And its highest nature is the siddhi. It's like a superpower. And the siddhi of the sixth gene key is peace. So what we are understanding through this specific codon in our DNA is that the way we are hardwired as human beings to find peace is paradoxically through conflict. Because once we experience conflict, it gives us an opportunity to master diplomacy. And so for me, if I start experiencing conflict, I get myself to pause, take a breath, calm my nervous system, check if I'm actually in danger. No, okay. And then pivot my perspective to see, okay, how can I achieve diplomacy in this situation? And if I want to be listened to in diplomacy, it's important that I listen to the other. So rather than thinking, oh, they're taking something away from me, I need them to know that. Rather, what this key helps us to really digest and master is the ability to deeply listen to another, to understand, why are they getting feisty? Where is this conflict coming from? What do they think I am going to take away from them? And by understanding that and making space for that conversation, it allows us to actually diplomatically understand, okay, these are my needs. What are your needs? Okay, they're your needs. Okay, how can we negotiate something that will be a win-win for both of us? But if we stay in the fear body, then we just stay in this reactive dance where it's like a tango that never really sorts itself out. And that's where we then need to get the boss in. We have to get human resources. We have to get the law in. We end up going to court cases. We're firing people and all the rest. And we have staff turnover churning through because we're not taking time to slow down, clear our inner checkbook, take care of our own inner business so that we can hear deeply, to be able to really receive another and to listen to another and what they're scared of does not mean that you have to submit to it. But it does mean we need to be compassionate enough to actually listen and then share what we are worried about being taken away and how can we work through that. And that's how we create peace. So that 6th gene key alone, if that was created into the corporate workplace as a part of a study manual to contemplate, it would go miles in smoothing out the recruitment process, to smooth out the staff retention, and really help raise the spirits and connect people over their unified sense of purpose. And so the last part I'll add on before I'd love to bring on Taya, and we'll play with her profile as a little demo. The part I really want to bring in here is this frequency band, shadow, gift, and city, relates directly to your DNA. So if you imagine a strand of DNA in your body, when you are under stress, and stress is essentially the response of the body perceiving danger of some kind, even though it may not sound, I'm just stressed, there's just a lot going on, it's still a fear that's driving that stress, that's pushing it. When you're in stress, your DNA tightens up, and DNA actually emits things called biophotons. So biophotons, essentially biological light. Your DNA emits light. Now, when you are in stress, your DNA tightens and those biophotons reduce. So what does that mean? That means you're playing dead, essentially. You are shutting down your light that you are communicating to the world with, because we don't just communicate with words. I'm sure you've all experienced that feeling. You sense when someone comes in. You can kind of feel what mood someone is in when they're there. And that's the problem with business when we try to do it all left brain, all kind of like old school rigid, is you can't hide when stress is alive, when the shadows are at play. Your light gives it away, or your lack of light gives it away. And then people become suspicious because they sense something isn't right, but we're not being authentic with our expression. So the idea here is, if we can move out of stress, what the DNA does is it begins to relax. It begins to open up. And as it begins to relax, and the reason it relaxes is because we feel safe. So the greatest example here is the caveman days, right? So there's a dinosaur, you're out there with your club, and there's a dinosaur. You want stress to go wild. You want your body to be stressed. You want your body to be pumped with adrenaline, right? Because there's a dinosaur and it genuinely will eat you. So that is what stress is for. It's for moments where you need to get out of danger. Now, once you run away back into your cave and you're safe and sound and you know the dinosaur can't get you, your body automatically will let go. The stress passes, your body goes back into its gift frequency. It relaxes. Light starts emitting from it again and communicating. So your cells communicate through biophotons, through this light. So your health becomes better because your regeneration of your body and your cells starts becoming more effective and efficient because you've got light communicating everywhere, creating synergy in the body. And so then the DNA, when you then take it even further, and this is really what we talk about with enlightenment or, full awakening, is about taking your DNA. And to me, that's really what this kind of spiritual journey is all about. It's about how fully can you activate your genetic potential that is in you. Because what begins to happen when we drop into these higher states, and the cities, these superpowers, we shouldn't race for them. The gift frequency is where we want to be about now. The cities kind of represent our future human nature. But the idea is that when you really allow your DNA to fully expand and activate, the light that comes out of it is unreal. It's the same light that we would see drawn in sacred places of their holy men and women of the past. They would draw them with these halos and these glows, because that is the light that comes out of us when we are in those enlightened spaces. And so this really, what this comes down to is a very simple process. Everything really comes down to how you perceive your reality. If you perceive your reality as dangerous, your mind will translate that to tell your DNA it's in danger. It will tighten. It'll turn off the light so the dinosaur can't see it or sense it and pretend it's not there. When your mind perceives that you are safe again, then it will begin to relax. Your light will turn on, and you will find that your communication with others will go through the roof because they can feel your light. They can sense you. So they know that the words you are sharing come with authenticity. And the biggest issue we have in the world that's coming, in business, in life, in general, politics, economics, everything, is trust. Trust is going to be the biggest challenge for us to overcome. And the only way that I know of reliably and sustainably generating trust is through being authentic and honing our own intuition so that we can actually sense that light from another and know when they are empowered and when they are not. And if somebody in your workplace is not empowered, if they're struggling, the idea is not to guilt them for that or tell them to leave their problems at home, but go, okay, how can I help this person feel more safe? The trick is you don't want to empower the victim mindset and say, poor you, but rather you want to see what tools can I help support this person with? How can I help them emotionally regulate? What do they maybe think about the situation that maybe isn't true? How can I, first of all, understand where their inner conflict is coming from, and then be diplomatic with how I can help their frequency raise, reduce their stress, so that we can have honest, genuine communication. And if we have that and a shared sense of purpose in a company, then you can take that to the bank. You will have success one way or another, because when you have a synergistic organization working together that can emotionally regulate, that can be self-accountable and diplomatic and communicate authentically, fully with each other, then your organization becomes incredibly adaptable. You will find that everyone will be willing and able to move around to fit whatever the situation needs. So, and thank you, Patricia. So I love the way you talk about the stress reaction connected to the DNA and the biophotons. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to the way this is going to change the world. We're seeing more and more people opening to this. We're seeing businesses, entrepreneurs, CEOs, people turning up in these sessions that, I never thought I'd be doing sessions with. Pharmaceutical executives, people that used to be the ones that I would fight against. I'm now realizing we got to stop fighting, but rather start reducing our stress and communicating. All right, Taya, do you want to jump up and we'll share your profile? There's definitely one part, Taya, that I'm super excited to share about. All right, fantastic. So if you can drop a comment, let me know if you can see the Gene Keys profile here. And Taya, how are you doing? I'd say this evening, but it's this afternoon for you, isn't it?
Hi. Hi, Mark. I was so much enjoying your talk. So I'm looking forward to this reading. And as a conscious business co-founder, I think that we are really addressing the right topic. And I hope that this will reach as many people as possible. So thank you. Thank you so much for this.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. And again, I really appreciate the invite, Taya. All right, so we're going to assume that you can all see it, the profile here. So this is what a Gene Keys profile looks like. So you have the green spheres on the outside. Oh, thanks, Patricia. You definitely see it clearly. The green spheres are the activation sequence. The red spheres are where the emotional body gets juiced up. That's the Venus sequence. And the blue spheres are really about prosperity. And when it comes to business, this is where a lot of the energy gets put when we want to look at how we work, etc. So the first thing, Taya, I wanted to share with you something that popped out at me straight away. And then I wanted to just ask you afterwards if there is something, that you wanted to kind of drop into a bit more specifically.
Great.
So the first thing I wanted to touch on, Taya, is your sphere of culture. So for those watching, the sphere of culture is that blue sphere. It has 8.4 in it for Taya. Your profiles will all have something unique in it. So Taya, you have this 8th gene key, which we're not supposed to have favorites, but it's one of my favorites. And it's the 8.4. So I just wanted to kind of break down how we can use this profile to get a bit of a context. So the first thing I wanted to point out is that you're what we call a line 4. So the gene key is the number on the left. The line number is the number on the right. Every gene key has 6 specific lines, which are almost like unique little expressions or stages of how that theme rolls out. And so you, Taya, have a 4th line in your culture. And we can see there the keynote, line 4, network. So straight off the bat, I can say that your contribution to the global culture or the work culture that you get involved in is on the level of the network. So what this means is, okay, so we have line 1, is an entrepreneur. You're designed to just create, do things on your own. Line 2 is the partner that starts partnering up and connecting and getting that entrepreneur's work out there. Line 3 is working in teams between 3 to 15 people, whereas you have a line 4, which is essentially like the fungi network in a sense. So that's the organic version of your line, Taya, is, if you think of the rainforest in like South America or Brazil, they have this immense mycelium, fungal network of communication that is actually carrying messages from all the different locations in the jungle, letting them know what's going on, what's coming, so the plants and animals can all be prepared. And so in that sense, you are a line 4. You are the mycelium of networks, of businesses, etc. So what will come natural to you is the networking, the connecting the dots and being in between these groups in that sense. Now, this doesn't mean you can't be an entrepreneur. It doesn't mean that you can't work in a group, but it will mean that you will thrive in the networking. When you reached out to me on LinkedIn and we started that connection, and I felt that resonance straight away. I was like, oh, great, let's do it. Now, I may not have felt the same resonance with someone without the same design because you are built for it. So now, more uniquely, is your 8th gene key. This is like the flavor that you carry with you in what you offer in your networks and how you create that network. And it also is what governs how much you are thriving in your prosperity, how much you are thriving in your work that you do. And so that 8th gene key, we can see the shadow of mediocrity, the gift of style, and the city of exquisiteness. Now that's quite a superpower, exquisiteness. And this shadow of mediocrity, what this says to me, Taya, is anywhere that you are compromising your unique way of being and expressing yourself, you will be compromising your prosperity. You'll be cutting out your capacity to truly network with the right people and allow that flow, that mycelium to work. And so the gift of style is really speaking to the importance that you are not allowing anyone outside of you to govern how you're meant to be. It's designed. So this gift of style is really about finding your unique flavor and having the courage to shine it into the world. So the 8th gene key is often represented as a diamond. And the shadow of mediocrity is a diamond covered in dirt. All right. So it can't be seen. It's a diamond hiding. And so what can tend to happen, and you may have experienced this in your earlier days, where especially, for example, the Conscious Business Club, it's like business of all places to try to bring consciousness and spirituality into it. I mean, that's going to be one of the ones where you'll get criticized. People will call you all kinds of things. If you go into a mainstream organization and start talking about the importance of consciousness, it will be so easy to be rejected. And the line 4 carries a fear of rejection. So what can tend to happen is if it doesn't feel safe to express yourself, then it can be a sacrificing of that, a fitting in. So, okay, I'll try and cover it all up just like the company likes to see it. I won't say words like consciousness. I won't say this. I won't say that. And it begins hiding things that are really meaningful to you. The other way of this mediocrity is to then do the reactive version. So the reactive version of this shadow is where you go, F you to the organization. I don't care. I'll be whoever I want to be. And then you rebel against it, right? Now, the problem with rebelling, and this shadow of mediocrity got me good, Taya. It was like for so many of my years, I thought I was so unique. I was this great rebel that was trying to change the world in ways that never had been done before. And then through deep contemplation, and this gene key itself was the one that helped me understand, I'm no different to every other person calling themselves a rebel, pushing everything away. And I'm actually still playing a victim of what everyone says is the way things should be, because I'm doing the opposite. I'm not doing what I want. And what I began to find with this 8th gene key over time was, oh yeah, some of that corporate stuff is actually good. Some of that stuff is actually stuff that I do like and is part of me. But also, you know what? You're just going to have to love me for my weirdness, because I'm bringing that to the table too. And so the more that you can bring your unique style into your networking events to be who you are fully and authentically, the more naturally people are going to gravitate, that your networking is going to it will continue to become next level. And your diamond of who you are will be easier and easier to recognize because it's being demonstrated to the world through your actions, if that makes sense. So how does that land, Taya? Does that resonate?
Well, you just know how to put it so well. So thank you for this. And yeah, for sure, this is something I was struggling a lot, and I still do sometimes. So, it's easy to be rebellion, and it's much harder to find your authentic style. And also, I was conditioned in terms of, you should look after your image. So I was really taught by my parents that this is important. So, and you shouldn't stand out of the crowd and things like this, in terms of, being awkward or something like this. But well, I am awkward. I believe we all are in some way. So because we are all authentic and unique, right? So I just really feel this gene key. Thank you.
Absolutely. And it's important as well that this is a journey. It's not about achieving anything, right? It's like, this is an ongoing process. And that's why, again, I love this work is every time that I go through these profiles, when we're running retreats or things, I'm learning new things about myself all the time. And if we were to fully awaken our full potential immediately, we might die. Our bodies aren't ready for it yet. Our society isn't ready for it yet. So there is a gradual kind of fairy tale rolling out. And by understanding this dynamic, it helps kind of just relax our inner world. It helps us just to relax and okay, that's just where I'm at right now. I can see that I'm still playing mediocre. I can see that I'm still letting that sneak in, and that's okay. And that's one of the real clues to this work, is that it's about acceptance. But acceptance has to be self-acceptance first. And so, Taya, unless you have a specific question you've been wanting to ask, there is a little bit related to what you just shared that I can touch on. But I will ask, is there something related to the topic we're speaking to tonight around your profile?
Well, no, you just continue. I'm curious, so I want to know. I want to know more.
Yeah. Okay, great. So for those of you that are listening in, first of all, let's all thank Taya for her vulnerability and willingness to be up in front of everyone and open. It's when we have our Gene Keys profiles open, it tells us a lot about us. Now, it tells a lot about our makeup of our genetic makeup. Everyone is still unique. So you can't look at someone's profile and go, oh, you are this, you are that. It's like, no, it's just a guide for our genetic vehicle in that sense. But it still is a vulnerable thing. So thank you, Taya, for that. As you were just describing, when you have that 8.4 in your culture, I absolutely can be compassionate and understand that, the first 7 years of your life is related to what we call the SQ. So for everyone watching, that's the sphere smack in the center, SQ, the spiritual quotient. So you, Taya, have a 42.4. So this dictates the theme of our first 7 years. And this is actually a really great example of why this work is so important in business, because we are all bringing in our childhood wounds to the business, to the board meetings. We're bringing it into our sales meetings. We're bringing these shadow frequencies in if we haven't digested them. And when you look at your SQ, Taya, you have a 42.4. So the first thing I'll speak to is that fourth line again. You've got a bit of fourth line going on in your profile. So it means there's a deep connection to community, wanting to belong, to need that feeling of belonging somewhere. And so you can see the keynote line for belonging, kinship, and community. So in the first 7 years of your life, this is the theme that would have been the most supportive to allow your higher self to fully land in your body. If you didn't receive this, which I don't know anyone that did, if you didn't receive this, then what happens is the bandwidth of your higher self gets kind of limited. Only a little bit comes through because it's not quite ready yet in your body until it's safe. So the idea is that for the first 7 years, as a child, you would have been wanting to belong somewhere, which would lead to a kind of behavior that wants to please others because you don't want to be rejected. You don't want to be kicked out of the tribe and left to starve in the streets. And so then if we look at the 42 gene key that comes with this, it's the city of celebration, the gift of detachment, and the shadow of expectation. And I think you don't have to be a Gene Keys genius to understand how the shadow of expectation and wanting to belong can very easily lead to mediocrity, to lead to a sacrificing of our own uniqueness. And so this is where it really can help us understand what's underneath these issues that we're experiencing in our world, so that we can kind of be a lot more precise with how we open them up and how we contemplate them. And so even though we can't change what happened in the first 7 years, we can change how we perceive it. We can shift ourselves out of feeling like a victim of it and rather understanding it. We can understand, okay, our parents had their pressures, their conditioning. The world was where it was. It wasn't as safe as it is now. And, we can kind of start developing a compassion and a kind of forgiveness through understanding. And then we can begin parenting ourselves. So if you want to do parenting work, self-parenting work, the gene key of the SQ is really one of the greatest clues on how you can do that. And so for you, Taya, there is this real element that in order to feel that freedom that you are here to have to express yourself is to allow everything to be okay. The gift of detachment doesn't mean you don't feel. It's about not being attached to the outcome and feeling fully in that experience and being able to celebrate the experience, knowing that no matter how challenging it is, that every challenge, if we take it on, will lead to growth. And that's something worth celebrating. And so by having that detachment, so the way you could see how you can play with these the expectation can lead to getting stuck. And if you expect yourself to be a shining diamond and to be exquisite, that expectation itself can be the very thing that keeps you in mediocrity, trying to be exquisite, as opposed to really just allowing it to be okay as it is, and to then rather just allow your uniqueness in, like you said, that awkwardness. I agree, Tay. I think we're all awkward. And I think awkwardness is a beautiful part of the human experience. And the sooner that we allow awkwardness to be a beautiful thing, and to be able to smile and go, okay, that's being human. The sooner we can get to being able to drive real for benefit businesses where we can thrive. And the last piece I'll throw in here, Taya, for you, before I think we probably are coming to time, is your IQ, which is your trigger point. So the sphere of IQ, down and left from the SQ there, and you have the 2.2. It's the city of unity, the gift of orientation, and the shadow of dislocation. You have a line 2, the brilliant mind, and provocative. Now, what this is what we call the trigger point. So whenever you're in relationship dynamics at work or at home, and you get triggered, it's related to this shadow. And the shadow is dislocation. And the shadow of dislocation really comes down to your mind not really knowing where it belongs. So you can see the relationship that gets formed by these different keys. They're very unique weavings. And so the shadow of dislocation and the provocative mind means, because the second line can be pretty feisty, you know, so if you feel like you're not sure what's going on and where your feet are, it can make it hard for you to find the brilliant mind, because you will find that your ideas come out of nowhere, that you have a mind that is able to have brilliant insight, but it can't be forced. It needs to feel like you're in the right place. That's the gift of orientation, to feel like when you're with another, that you are orientated together. And if that person is disrespectful, they're not grounded in themselves, etc., it's going to be hard to orientate to them until you understand that. And when you can have compassion for that, okay, that's what's happening. Your brilliant mind will work out whether, okay, there's a solution here to how we can bring them into orientation, or I will leave this situation because it's not conducive to me right now. Take a pause, get my emotional balance back, and then come back again.
Great.
So how did that land, Taya?
Very well. Also something, because I've done all three sequences, and I was really intrigued specifically by this jinky and the line. And I was, and still am, working on this a lot. Yeah. And what you said about when I feel dislocated, that my brilliant mind just go off, it's so true. And also this can lead to even bigger feeling of dislocation. So it can be really, really exhausting, basically. Yeah. So yeah, great. You put it so great. Thank you.
Beautifully. And I think that you just put your finger on a really important point, Taya, which wraps this all up into why the gene keys and human design and business. And it's really to be able to stop these addictive cycles of pain and suffering that we are perpetuating on each other, because we're minding each other's business and not our own.
Exactly. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Thank you, Mark. So much. Thank you so much. This was
my
great.
Pleasure. It's been my pleasure. I just want to thank as well everyone who's watching live, and also if you're watching the replay, thank you for taking the time. You know, it doesn't matter if you're here live at the time, you know, it's to share these ideas. It's a beautiful thing, because there's not much point me sitting there speaking this out to an empty void, but to be able to share is such an amazing thing that lets me live my purpose. So thank you, Taya, for inviting me and recognizing me to come and share my genius. Thank you to all the audience that came and interacted. Patricia, I see you speaking about the 6th line there. It's the sphere of culture. That so Patricia has commented, I have a 63.6 in the sphere of culture. Even though I'm very much into the gene keys, fully getting the 6th line is quite a challenge for me. And so Patricia, and anyone that has six line 6s, and if you don't know what that is, don't worry, you will at some point when you get into the work. it is one of the more mystical lines that takes time. It kind of contains all of them. And the line 6's challenge is to not stay separated as a judge of the world, even though you can see a lot about where things are going, but rather cultivate a deep compassion to come into the noise of the imperfect world and embrace it as a role model within it. So I'll just drop that as a little cherry on the cake there. And so thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your comments. Anya, Taya, I really appreciate everything you've done in bringing this Conscious Business Club to place. It has super excited me about the future of where things are going. Yay, there you guys are. I can't hear you.
Anya, we can't hear you.
Yeah, I saw that
No.
now. I was on mute. So thank you, Mark. This was really amazing. I really enjoyed it. I learned a lot of new stuff. And I'm sure that everyone who was watching this or who will be watching this, it will be really useful for them. You know, like either they are entrepreneurs or like working in a corporation. Wow, I actually wrote down a few of your ideas and they were like mind blowing, which I really, really appreciate. I like to hang out with people who are expanding my awareness.
Amen to that. Well,
Thank you,
thank
Mark.
you.
Mark,
Yeah.
thank you so very much. I would also like to inform everyone on this podcast that you're available for individual sessions, right? So everyone who wants to really gain a deeper understanding of themselves can contact you and book this session with you. Is this correct?
Absolutely.
Okay,
So
great.
that's after many years, that's now my life's work, is doing sessions with people, helping create that space for breakthrough. It's something I love being a part of. And the rest of my time is getting out there and working on the rest of the solutions to this world. So I'm looking forward to working together on business stuff.
Yeah.
And I believe that we are going to talk about Gene Keys, you know, and similar solutions also in Conscious Business Club a lot, because the future
Fantastic.
is not there. The future is already here, and you know we are living it now.
Yay.
Thank you very much, Mark.
Thank
I'll
you
see
so
you
much,
soon
Mark.
again. So thank you everyone who has been watching this, and reach out. Let's raise this collective consciousness of business together. Bye.
Amen to that.
Bye-bye.
Take care all.
Bye. Bye.